Thank you everyone for being in class and for watching online. We know both really are going on. I welcome again questions, feedback. So I'll put again my email address. One difference from the lecture yesterday as opposed to Monday is we had a lot of question and answer, and it's very useful. The main thing I've learned is you guys really want to know more details about what I've done so far with my own startup, and I'll respond to it. So I'll continue the story, and you guys can continue asking questions related to that. One of my big beliefs still is that I want to provide a framework, and that's why there is a certain order to the lecture from starting to finish. So this is what we have here. We have talked about how ideas can be generated, and questions related to that is how do you proceed when you start having ideas? Do you just pursue one? Do you accumulate them? And I'll use the same example that I've used yesterday with the customer discovery, where you go and have fun in a cloud of dust, and if you can generate more ideas and talk to people that you trust about it, go around, talk a little bit to customer, but not commit to anything yet, that's great. And by the way, one thing that I've always did when I was younger is worry that I'll forget stuff. You know, I'll have an idea and then I'll worry that I'll forget it. But for me, anyway, I've realized that the really good ideas, somehow they kind of stay, okay? So you could discipline yourself and write down, after you've gone through this for a while, write down what your ideas are, and again, prioritize them on things that you're going to focus on, you know? And then take on the next step. Is this something that would be useful to somebody, for what? And then start that initial vision. So related to that, there was a question just before class with respect to me personally. And one interesting story was growing up, somehow my mom thought I would be an entrepreneur. You know, I was 14 years old, and never occurred to me then at all. But she mentioned that to somebody who was kind of a financial advisor for her family, and she didn't know I was listening. And I didn't make anything out of it. I did not know. I did not care. And I've always been that way, where there's a certain horizon ahead that I'm comfortable seeing with. Just like if you ride in a car, you only need to look a few cars ahead. If you ride on a motorcycle, which I do, you need to look further, but it's still within your vision range. You don't need to look at the app to figure out that there's an accident somewhere. You just look ahead. And that's been a little bit how I have evolved from not knowing that I would want to be an engineer to knowing that I would want to be an engineer. Just a year ahead of deciding how to go to college. And in college, started thinking, well, engineering is really for me, so I'm going to do probably some consulting work. And how am I going to, you know, figure that out? Was pretty close to graduation. And that led me to grad school, and this idea on the first technology that we have for frictional sliding as opposed to harness just came out of coming here to MIT and being asked, what are you going to do? So it was a really good opportunity that was offered to me by my thesis advisor, that he wasn't saying, well, I want you to work on this because I've got money on this. He pretty much said, well, you know, this semester you should really start thinking about what you want to do. Knowing what's going on in the group, of course, and based on interest and things like that. So if you ever become a faculty, and you can do that for your students, I think it's a great thing. It's tough though, because then you're on the line for getting it done. If somebody tells you this is what we have money for, this is exactly where we're going, you say, oh, I'm going to try to get there. You know, for me, it was kind of the reverse process, where I proposed what I wanted to do, and he cautioned me that that may not be realistic. So But it was part of the entrepreneurship. I mean, even when I graduated with this frictional sliding, again, I had people tell me, "Oh, this is too complicated. You know, why have you done this?" Or you know, all sorts of things, and you just live with it. Okay, you just say, "Okay, well, thank you for your feedback. I guess that this is not going to become a standard piece of equipment unless I go very forceful about it one day." And it did stay in my mind. So, you know, these ideas, of course, you have them, and you can have a list. I did not have that level of details. I think I've always been thinking that, yeah, I'll get experience. And then one motivation actually for me to work really, really hard has been to be able to do what I want to do. And these is all these self-help book that tells you, you know, this is what motivates someone. This is what motivates this other person. You know, some people will want power. Some people will want prestige. I don't know what the other things are, but for me, it has been freedom. And that's part of why I'm in this country. Yeah, so the word was mentioned about career anchors. It is one of those little self-assessment guide that tells you, you know, what you want to do. I believe one challenge with that, it will change over time. If you do the survey and you're 25 and you do it later, you may find some differences there. On the career anchor, I rated high for technical competency. And that's a little bit why my engineering consulting practice went very well, because I'll just care about really, really getting it right. But yeah, on top of the list, it wasn't so much autonomy. So in the context of the startup company, I'm really tied in, okay? I don't have option right now. I got a lot of people that have invested and put a lot of their time and sweat and effort into this, but I made that decision. So now I assume the consequences, really. So if that makes sense. And related to this, if I could go back that 3 or 4 years, one side of me tells me at the beginning I should have spent a little bit more time on the critical review than I did. I just really back then assumed that this was going to work, and went a little bit more forcefully the first year than I could have. But the counter side to that is, because I went in, I've learned a lot. So if I had started more on a slower pace the first year on this, you know, not going to the big company quickly, figure out I'm getting a no there, not going to the lab and figuring out if we can get some level of accuracy, and not trying to reach out to a bunch of different people to get their feedback. Maybe it would have taken 2 years for me to realize that this was not going to be just engineering. You know, it was going to have a big aspect of business. So I've learned that more quickly by putting myself out there, because I knew nothing. The first time I spoke to who became the director for funding with the National Science Foundation, he was very, very patient. He was telling me the same thing that I've been telling you in class, which is, you have a great idea, but how are you gonna really bring it into completion? And he was pretty much saying, you have no idea. And I asked for a reference. So, you know, I took the feedback, I took the hit, and he said Steve blank. And you'll see a lot of that, and that's where we're gonna go. So without further elaborating here, what the NSF says on customer discovery is, you have to look for pain, okay? So when we say value proposition, if that doesn't resonate with you, think about pain. The reason people go to the pharmacy and buy is because they want to solve something that is not okay to them. So the value proposition is, you have to find customers that are just not happy with where they are right now. If they don't see that they're not happy, it is going to be more difficult. And then we talked about yesterday the market segment. That's very important. Third bullet about building and validating a profitable business model. We started that with the class saying you create value and then you have to capture it. If you have no idea how you're going to do all of that, you want to sit down and find more answers to your questions to be able to do that early on. So the ultimate goal as a startup is to set you on a course to be a real company. One reason that I've selected, and some of this is really mix and match from a lot of information that was covered over days of training, but the reason I put that there is don't fool yourself thinking that you're a company, that you're a so-called real company if you're a startup. So, you know, you need to take care of people. So you do need to have so-called human resources, but it cannot be the way that a large company does. Nothing can be the way of a large company. And it may look very obvious, but it's very, if you have worked for a big organization, it's a shock when you start getting out there as part of a startup team, because if you have a problem with your computer, well, there's no IT department. If you just move, well, there's no really somebody in charge of facilities, right? It's just receiving stuff and telling people and figuring out where to put it. I mean, there is a lot. You need a phone, well, you're gonna find somebody to take care of that. So a lot of things that are assumed when you're part of a major organization are just not real. And I mention that because for me, it wasn't big a change because I had a consulting startup before doing this technology startup. But for people that came into the team from working into big companies, they warned others in interviews. They said, just be aware that we are a startup. You know, this is not a lifestyle type of organization where people give you your deliverables, and so long as you meet that, you can have a grand time. No, it's a race, and if you get done a little earlier, well, the general mentality is go on and take on the next step, because there are things that take longer sometimes, and we have to work as a team. So something ends up taking longer, somebody else comes and help out. You know, it's really this agility to move resources around and to focus on the same goal is really what makes, in my perspective, a startup successful. That there is nothing about personal list of accomplishment at the end of the year. It's the group. All in, when all the pieces come together, it's what matters. And we actually don't spend a lot of time figuring out who made the biggest piece, because it's working hard and working as a team and really, really focusing on what's important.
The second bullet.
Yes?
You had mentioned about miniaturizing your thing, but currently, that was part of this focusing on that?
Yeah, so the question on the bullet about focusing, and there are two levels of focusing, right? Because there's a focusing here on ideas, which one you're going to pursue, and then what are you going to pursue it for, right? So if we think about any technology, you have the technology idea, and then for that idea, you have to find the market. So this bullet is really more specifically saying you already pick your idea. Now, which market are you going to benchmark it against to determine if it's a great idea? Now, it takes so much effort that the idea that you would do that for a bunch of ideas would require that you go full-time and you work with other people, or you have a lot of experience and you know a lot of people. And that's why at the end of the day, I think you need to have that leap of faith that you may have a bunch of ideas, but let's say, I'm going to be very generous with you. Let's say you pick 3, okay? If you really are mitigating your risk here. But if you try to go down that road, spending time talking to people with more than 3 ideas and then trying to find what would be the business model for those, it's more than a full-time job. Now all of a sudden you have a company figuring out what company to start. And I've not met those people yet. But that was a really good question. Tying back, and by the way, so this is what we've talked about, tying in when you're done with the customer discovery. You think you know who will write you the first check. You have to go and get the check. Early sales. That's the customer evaluation. So I'm making really, really simple. Those slides were prepared at the National Science Foundation. When I saw them, I said, you know, I'm going to emphasize those in class. So we talked a little bit about it at the end of the last class, but very, very simple. If you haven't gotten a check yet, don't even think that you're at the next step. That's what the NSF tells you here.
How big of a sales?
The question is how big of a sales? I think it really depends how big or small your venture is. I have been told that any check is good. I would not disagree with that. But you see, there is sales with an S. So I would say it is more important to try a few different customers than just getting bigger checks just from one. If you're going to base your entire customer creation based on very, very few people, you have to be careful because you never know what happens. This happened to us. The very first people who wrote checks, well, they kept writing checks, but just very, 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 very slowly to the point where you say, this is not going to work for us. I'm glad we have other people. And that's the funneling aspect of developing sales. And we'll talk about that next time, actually. So the last step after you've reached a point where the people start coming back, you know, they say, yes, we're glad that we spent the money. We want you to come again. Now you really have to start thinking, well, if I don't want to miss the opportunity and fail as a startup in not delivering, now I'm moving over to customer creation. And that means you have more time that you devote to a few customers to make a plan, to really, and what's been taught me mostly by the mentors here at VMS is at that point, you develop your case studies or your examples of success. So you build the reputation in your niche market that spending money with you is what makes the most sense. All right, so, and then again, building the company is the last one, and we don't need to talk about that. There are a more complicated way to think about customer discovery. So this is part of your handout. Be aware of it. I will disclose that I never followed anything that sophisticated, for better or worse. But essentially, there are entire books that will have work for you to do for months here in terms of organizing your thoughts. And it becomes up to you to decide which level of details you are able to do. The one really good questions that came out, and we spent a lot of time last time, and I'd like to close this on the market segment, is where to go. At first, you do this. You really actually, yeah, you just say, oh, I'm going to check here. I'm going to go to Europe and ask somebody what he thinks of this. You know, maybe because they have high-speed trains, there's something else over there that would be interested. They'd be interested in a type of phone that works at, you know, the speed of light, whatever. So you have to start as broad as you possibly can, but when you find something that is just not going to work easily, don't persist, would be my advice. If you really have good reason to believe that you haven't found your first segment, put it aside. Don't worry, it'll get back to you later if anything changes. And so that allows you to focus. And we've talked about it at the beginning. I said tree, but from the tree, the real work what allows you here to get your first check, you're not going to be able to do that for more than one market segment at the time. I don't think so. I mean, you might if this is your full-time job. But if this is a technology innovation, this is the topic of this class, chances are you're also involved with the technology. So, and the team, and therefore your time to really just handle this study of customer market is compressed.
What are you selling at that point?
Very good question. What are you selling? You are trying to have the discussion with the customer on what is the value to them to lose the pain. Very simple example. I have a headache. Am I going to pay $100 to get rid of it today? No. You know, there is a price point. And if nothing else, as soon as you possibly can, you want to get that answer. Because that's going to determine if this, and then how many people are like that at that price point. And it's very, very easy to fool yourself. Very, very easy. Does that answer a little bit? So when you do your customer discovery, you sell the potential is the question.
More positive than that.
Yeah. You're not selling. That's the point at that point. You're discovering. So it's very, very different. So we don't want to use the word sales when we're in the first stage here. Because because all we're doing at first, we're in this customer discovery. First box, right here. And this is a very good question, and we're going to cover that almost next thing, is how to get those answers the best way. But you're not selling, because if you're selling, they'll just say no, you won't know why, and you won't get much further. So it's an earlier stage that we're talking about here when you figure out your market segments. We talked about the volume price point. You're trying to resolve that very early on. If there's 20 bridges that we could test, well, I'm sorry. You know, this is not going to work for us. We're going to do 2 each year. This is not a business model. We'll do it later when we have time, is the bottom line. The technical complexity, very, very important. I mentioned about trying to do the very specific welds, even if it's a really big opportunity, if it's going to put $3 million to make a tool to do that, you can't justify it as a starting point. You want to find something that's easier to do. And for us, yeah, a big pipe. You put a big machine on it. Nobody have a problem with that so long as you can bring it to the site, for example. So it's an example here. Market access, that is very important, because if you're going to sell to the auto industry, well, you want to have in your team somebody that really understands that industry, or know some people in there probably. I mean, or really be able to learn quickly, and you have to think about that. There are, market segments that are going to be easier to use. You ask me to go out and sell the new lines of products for clothing, I'll have no idea, and I won't succeed, even if I may have the best zipper possible. And I can patent it. It's not for me. Somebody else going to have to do that, and it's why I put the word team there, and we'll talk about team as well. All right, so those are, I'm setting some expectation for you. We'll cover specifically how to get our questions answered in customer discovery, and we'll also cover a little bit some aspect of team at the end of today. But all other questions you have, go right ahead here, because all we're trying to do is narrow. So we have an idea, we have a use. A, B, C, D. I mean, it's a great idea. There's got to be a lot of use for it. Now, which way you go? You got to start putting some number here. You say, well, you know what, idea C, I think is number one. Is that true? I mean, that's science, right? Hypothesis. If you remember science, I mean, you guys are all students, so you know what that is. You don't want to have 20 hypotheses. I mean, you're never going to graduate. So you want to try to put one and also evaluate, am I going to be able to answer this reasonably? Do I need help to answer this? But I do like the idea that you go and put yourself out there, making your best bet. I mean, it's a lot about making bets and readjusting at that point. But you can't take a tree and say, I'm going to study every branch of it. So you have to decide, am I going to start at the top, at the bottom? I'm going to go in the fall, in the spring. You got to have a strategy here, depending on what you are trying to learn. And that's the process of customer discovery, is learning, not selling. Okay, something to really be mindful of is out in your customer. We talked about the early people that are just ready to write checks. You definitely want to find those, but you do want to think about all the others. What does it look like? You know, example of a bridge, very specifically this one here, the Longfellow Bridge. Let's say you do find someone that really is going to pay you just about any money you'd like if you're going to spend the next 3 months making a tool for them. Now you're faced with a situation. Is this money and commitments going to be enough learning and lead me towards my next step? Or is it a distraction? And you'll face that all the time. If you try to think about getting something useful out there on the market, it's the difference between making progress towards your goal or really specifically addressing the people's need, but without thinking about your longer term. And that's why you need a business plan. Because when you're in the earlier stage, it's difficult to decide on a few people that may really want to do something, but you can't make it fit with what you need to do. And it's tough. It's tough to say no. But
if I was a customer, I'd almost just be saying, when do I get it? When do I get it? I want it now.
Yeah.
How long do I have to wait?
The comment is the customer expectation on, you have a discussion, you say, this is what we're going to be able to resolve for you, and they may say, I want it now. Well, look, you want to be truthful, but there's nothing wrong with being a little optimistic on things like that. I mean, it's just part of life. You know, say, well, sorry, I can't do it this year, you know, but how about next year, you know? And a lot of times, technologically, it does give you some time, you know, to start figuring out, you know, how am I going to be able to do that aspect a year from now? If they say no, well, it's, again, you're just trying to learn. What I would do is say, okay, so, I mean, so you're going to resolve this year. How are you going to resolve it? I mean, you'll find out what your competition is. It's very useful. So I think this is a really good example. This is an example of the real value of putting yourself out there with something that's not ready. You learn. You learn and you adjust your plan to time everything right. Very good question. Thank you. Everybody else, anything on that? My friend, I'm going to have to ask you to ask me a question. Anything you're curious about? Think about it when it's the right time. Same over there. And you, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, this is for you guys. This is the reason why we're doing this lecturing, is make sure that you learn something that you can take home and hopefully benefit from at some point in your career. All right, so I think we covered that. This is just a summary here. Identify and validate a problem or a need in the market. That's all you're trying to do. And now we're going to spend a few minutes going over how you can do that. I hope I got you motivated that you need to do it, that you're going to learn a lot. You have to prepare yourself. So if you're going to meet somebody in the auto industry, Google it, figure out a few things, what this company does, what's been going on in the industry, and start thinking about asking questions. Could this be useful for this? Could this be useful for that? I mean, it's just too easy to just say, hey, I'm the smart guy, I got this idea, and could it be useful for you? You put the people out there, it's like, well, so you want me to do all the work for you? You know, that's how I feel when people do that to me. So you want to do your work, be very respectful of people's time, and you can't count on one person to solve your problem. I cannot emphasize this. You got to go full blown. So, you know, Seth was 30 interviews, whatever the number is for you, depending on how lucky you are to get the right ones to learn. And don't stick to a rigid plan. If you say, well, my original plan is to call 5 automaker, and the first one you get your answer, just move on. Move on to the next thing that you're trying to get an answer for. So it is about you. It's about you learning in the customer discovery. And the fastest you can do that, the better off you are. Now, the best way is mutual introduction. So you have somebody that knows somebody, you send them some information, and they connect you. And now is your opportunity. And to not sabotage that opportunity, the best you can show that you've done your homework and you're not going to waste people's time, that they're really only going to need to talk to you for about 5 minutes, they're more willing to be like, oh. And if you can make them curious somehow, it works really nicely. All of a sudden, they have time. They'll tell you to call, which number, what time, and you do it. For my case, 1/3 of the time. Regardless how hard I try, got to persist. Got to follow up a week later first, maybe. I mean, you've got my email from Tuesday last week. And by the way, why would you send an email at 9 a.m. on Monday? Don't you think people have other things to do, you know, starting their weeks? Think about that stuff, really. I mean, it really is going to help you. There's even Boomerang and other things like that. I mean, it's crazy. You know, I do have people doing that to me, and I'm just like, okay, well, it may just fall through the cracks. I'm sorry. And even during the week, people are busy. I mean, you're busy. I'm not sure if you always respond to emails from your friends and family, okay? So somebody that you don't even know, you know, you better have a little hook there, you know, something that they'd be like, oh, maybe I should know a little bit about this so I can talk to other people about it, you know, because that's all you'll get at first. You're not going to get everything that you're looking for out of one call, but you really want to try to get that connection. So I've got 3 things there, and I was going to say, as a suggestion, I mean, you guys do exactly what you want, but something that has worked for me is what you have, what you know, and what you need. If you can write that 2 sentences, a 3-paragraph, it was a suggestion I had. It seems to be the easiest thing. The long emails, the very, very short one, I mean, you got to go in between and you target it to the person and what you know about them and what may interest them and kind of already funnel what they may be able to help you with. It's tough. But if you can do that, you're going to be more successful. And you'll learn. Because if you have a plan, like let's say you try that, doesn't work, you just adjust your plan. But if you just say, I'm going to try to get in touch with this person, hey, I'm this Joe, and I'm trying to do this, and help me. You know, maybe not. There are people that because I know how much they know, I will write them a 2-sentence email. But it's going to be all calculated, everything I say in that. I decided to bring this in because it was circulated a few days ago in the entrepreneur mailing list. Let's look at this together. Well, this image looks good. Doesn't mean the product's there. Okay, you can do that with SolidWorks. Provides thermal relief whenever you feel too hot or too cold in moderate environments. Worn like a watch, This device warm your wrist at the press of a button and make you more comfortable. How's that going to do that? Yeah, see, but you read the next paragraph, all right? I mean, doesn't that make you curious? To me, it really did. I mean, I'm using this because I'm a busy person. I consider myself busy, just like everybody. But I read that very first bullet, and I don't believe it. This technology is based on the key insight that warming or cooling one spot of your body can improve your overall comfort. That might be, right? I mean, true, not true? Okay. Whenever you start feeling too warm or too cold, you can activate it immediately for relief. Okay? And then there's a little bit more. Oh, it only takes a little time. And then the fireplace, for me, that's what I connected with. It's like, yeah, you turn on the fireplace, you feel warmer. The room's not warmer. But I followed through it to that point, and I was like, wow, yeah, I'll talk to you. You know, now, these guys, if this thing really works, they're lucky, right? Okay? You should go and work with them. But I decided to use it as an example. Guys, if there is any way that you can put people on the hook that they want to learn about you, they do not care if you're making out of titanium or aluminum or anything. They do not care how smart you are, but this is speaking to them. And there's nothing there that says, oh, but I'm sorry, it's only going to be available in 2 years. That wouldn't, you don't need to talk about that, okay? You don't want to talk about that. No, no, no. All those details, like it's going to cost $1,000. No, 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 no. Okay? And it really doesn't work like a watch because now you got questions. You're interested. So, by the way, they did have more information that was sort of losing it a little bit as far as the purpose here. But the idea about being brief is to get the interest. And as far as asking for help, because you know, in the customer discovery, this was a bit more later stage. They are making some sales with this. So this brochure is more evolved. But I wanted to emphasize how strong it is to put yourself in the reader's perspective. Because I mean, if I had time and they say, click here, enter your credit card, maybe I'll just do it, right? All right, now let's say you got people on the hook and now you have that opportunity to talk to them. Don't mess it up, okay? Don't mess it up. And I'm making a list for you that is out of this book, Talking to Humans. I'm not sure I like the title. That's really not why I went to engineering school for initially. But one person at a time. Yeah, well, that's not too. And work their schedule. Okay, that's important. Yeah, I mean, it's not that you, I had somebody doing this to me. I need to talk to you on Tuesday because this is due Wednesday. I'm sorry. I don't care. I don't care about your schedule. I got my schedule. So be proactive. Try to get your things scheduled ahead, and it's not going to help to tell people that you need things on a hurry. Now, if you're trying to be persistent, it's been 2 weeks, that may be a good time to say, hey, you know, I was hoping to do this, and I'm trying to get to the next step. I've already learned a few things since I sent you the original email, and therefore I would like you to know that this is one, perhaps, reason why it'd be useful to you. As opposed to be like, oh, you didn't get back to me? No, that's nagging. I mean, it's terrible. Okay. Know your goals. Oh, boy. What's your goals? Not selling, right? That was one item that was discussed. You're not selling. You're trying to learn. Discuss separate. I actually don't know what the third bullet is, but you should probably find that out. Get psyched to hear what you don't want to hear, okay? Don't get pissed off. You're learning fast, okay? You're taking the shortest route to know if you're wasting your time. So it's very, very valuable. And for that, you want to be very upfront that you're not trying to sell. You just, and to some extent, if you underemphasize the level of effort that you've already put into making this, the more comfortable you'll put people into a position that they can tell you. And that's why sometimes advisors to you are going to get more insight, because they'll just say, hey, I've got this group of students, they're working on this, and I'm a little bit worried that you may not be, interested to get it that quickly. Hey, you really are asking the question that you'll get an answer more likely that, oh, they've been working on this. Do you think that could be useful to you? They'll say yes. Is that going to tell you anything? No. It's just going to, it's like cheerleading. There's no cheerleading in those interviews. That's not what you're trying to do. Ask open-ended questions. Listen, don't talk. That's a big challenge for me. Yeah, follow your nose and drill down. So when they tell you something that is a little different, that you didn't expect, try to find out more. It's really a learning exercise. And I'll go straight to the last one. Write up your notes, meaning if you've learned something, log in the important items quickly and move on, because now you're gonna find your next link, and you may have to adjust your plan. But if you don't have that discipline, you end up asking the same question over again. If you're working it as a team, you do need to share what you've learned, so the other's not wasting the time trying to find the same information. A lot of times in this mode of developing something new, you can't just have redundancy, do the same thing 2 or 3 times just to confirm that you got it right. You have to have some faith that when somebody tells you something and then you confirm with somebody else, or you do something like that. But so I guess before we move on to the last topic, any questions here?
I went to entrepreneur workshop. They had some famous keynote speakers.
Yes.
One famous person, I won't say their name, a billionaire, was going bankrupt. He was depressed, but he had 3 times a week, he had these dinner conferences he had to go to. He was just tired. He didn't want to go, but he said, well, I'm supposed to go. So he goes there. He gets sat next to a banker. He vents all his frustration about how he thinks his idea is great and it's not working. He just carries on this conversation. At the end of the night, the guy sitting next to him says, give me a call Monday.
Yeah.
Just thinking that kind of interaction paid off.
Yeah, okay, so this was a really nice comment. Thank you for that. I'll try to summarize it in the sense that it's a story that somebody's having a problem, and I do that on the plane. In the plane, I'll be like, oh, the guy next door, like, oh, this is going to be tough. I'm trying to do this. And this is, for me, if I'm flying to Houston, it's probably an oil and gas person that's sitting next to me. So you learn something, right? And you're right. There's so many opportunities outside the formal, I'm trying to get an interview here to really learn something and get help. Yeah. I mean, it happened in my town, social hour. Oh, I just moved here and this is what I want to do. Okay. Well, we may need that, and you just find out things. Oh, we built these things for this company. Well, maybe you can build it for me, So it's very quick. So the book here, Talking to Humans, very, very thin. And that's, if you ever write a book, try to do that, okay? Because people don't have the time to read 500 pages. It's not that you're going to get paid that much more. I can't believe it. Okay, team, very, very important. And we're going to have to take it on with more details when I do the next lecture. By the way, this is going to give you an opportunity, right? We did 4 hours until today. And then next week, no classes, please. Tell me a story, send me some feedback. I'm craving it, okay? Because this is completely new. I'm trying what I can, given some other commitments I have. I want to be as helpful I can possibly be. That's the reason I'm here teaching with you. Okay, team, very top level. And this from a book that is not from an engineer. So that you have to be careful. There are things that are very, very useful, and some others that they don't necessarily fully grasp. The thing that is very good about this book is the concept, are you going to do this yourself, or are you really making a team? And they call it the king versus the rich. Presented this way, it sounds like an easy choice, but the reality is it does depend on the personality. It depends on your level of experience and what you're trying to do. So in more details here, and I'll read it because it's written very, very small, but if you're going to go solo on a technology idea, of course, you'll have to make sure you find a way to fill gaps because you can't do everything yourself. And that means you either postpone deadlines, you find corporate partners, and then you plan at a specific point in time to bring in more people. You say, I'm not going to touch this until I get to this point, and I'm going to need somebody at that point for that. I've seen mostly experienced people doing that, saying, I don't want to have to start making a plan with a team if I don't even know what exactly I'm trying to do. I can take on a little bit of the very initial process, and then when I get to this point, I'm going to get this type of person and this type of person. The other approach, where you bring in more people at the very beginning as part of the founder team, challenges communication, coordination, and the idea there is evaluate the marginal utility. Why this person, other than I like them and I know that more people, maybe the faster I'm going to be able to go and maybe the more successful I'm going to be. You really want to evaluate each individual on what they're going to be doing. Develop a process for decision making. That may take time, okay? So you're going to want to talk to people, do a little bit work with them. In my case, I had a few people, it was essentially a consultant. I was paying them at first to see how it would work. And then eventually I said, well, you know, I'd like you in. Some statistics, the same people. Startups that involve only one person to begin with, 18%, 2%, almost 40, 3, 20, 4, 12, 5, 5%. So it's a very steep curve here where in the majority of people, it will be a team of 2. And you always like to hear my story, so we were a team of 5 initially. And it was probably too much, so we're 4. So just a brief note here on these co-founders and early people. If they are really close friends, it's going to be harder to deal with the big issues. And if it's somebody that you've already worked with successfully, you may be more able to handle big issues easily. So it's just a very quick concept here, something to think about. All right, this chart about the relationship, roles, and reward, it's the topic of the book. And by the way, this is a big book. And I don't want to overemphasize it, but you know, this is an expert talking about this. And you definitely need all of that. If you're going to work as a team, you definitely need relationship, you need roles, and you need reward. Nothing wrong with that. I'm supplementing here as an idea to you is you also got to have risk, and you got to have to get the work done. You can consider it as part of the role maybe, but to me, these are also 2 very, very key factors that influence all of the above. How are you going to reward people? How are you going to build a relationship? And it's a lot more than just saying this is your role in the organization. It is, well, if it doesn't work, how are we going to do this? Is it your fault, or you just get back to us as soon as you can? So now we have to respond to it as a group. So it's a very, very big challenge. And I decided to go ahead and share with you what I think. So this is nothing more than that if you're going to be successful, bringing people in, setting expectations is very, very, very important. And there's a whole book about that. This guy here, I mean, he's not saying it. I don't think he has these 3 bullets, but it's all about, you know, preparing ahead for scenarios. It goes well, it goes bad. This is what we're trying to do, discussing that, and what are we going to do in this situation, this situation. At the end of the day, what do you expect that person to do? Why are they interested? You want to know that. It could be you learn something. So it's a same of customer discovery. You got to ask each other a question if you're going to work as a team, and how this is going to happen. So There are ways that you bring people in and the shares vest over 4 years, for example, is a standard way. So essentially, it's a minimum number of commitment. If you last a year, well, you get 1/4 of the shares that you were supposed to get originally. It's very simple. But if you don't know anything about that, don't try to reinvent it. Do talk to attorneys on topics that are specialty topics. Do talk to friends also, because you can find people that will make things more complicated than you like. For us, I had to spend too much time figuring out whether we were going to file an LLC or a C Corp. It was not okay. My advice, go ahead and file an LLC in Delaware, okay? If you don't have the time. And the reason, it's a modern way, and it's got a lot of case history there, and there'll be people that complain, but you can change to a C Corp if you need to. So it costs very little. You don't want to be spending a month and having meetings about something that you can do very quickly, and then focus on what is important, the customer discovery process. Well, again, thank you for all the questions during the class and before the class. I welcome your feedback, and we'll talk again Monday after next week. Thank you. Yes. Yes, yeah. Oh, the class continue on. I'm really speaking for this module. The schedule is circulated in. We had it on the screen. It is also on the Stellar website. So there's a lot of information for you guys to be able to follow the class. Thank you for your participation.